Davy Crockett was quoted as saying, "You may all go to hell, and I will go to Texas," shortly after losing his final bid for Congress in 1835, and shortly before what would be his infamous last stand at the Alamo. All over Texas, you'll find Davy Crockett's quote emblazoned on t-shirts, bumper stickers, shots, and pint glasses. I'd argue that no other state in the Union even approaches the level of pride that Texans have in their home state. And after spending the last 4 months of my life bouncing all over the Lone Star State, deep diving into their barbecue and beer, I can assure you, Texans do have a lot to be proud of. Each spring, when the thunder starts to rumble deep and mean in the west, the temperature drops and the clouds turn that eerie shade of green. Diamonds start falling from the sky. I'm a hail chaser, and this is hail season. That's when guys like me load up their trucks, kiss their families goodbye, and hit the road for 6 months to repair hundreds of hail-damaged cars, using specialized tools resembling medieval melee weapons. We travel all over the world in pursuit of hard work and adventure. Hundreds of us descend on a hailstorm like a siege of pirates, filling up your hotels, restaurants, bars, and breweries. We become a part of your community for months, and each stop on the hail trail becomes our new home. Live this life for a while, and you'll wake up sometimes with no idea where you are, or where you even belong. I'm Mike the Dent Guy, aka MC Norris, published author and hail gypsy, and believe me, I got stories to tell. The Texas Prairie, the old Comancheria. Merciless wastelands that inspired one of the greatest American authors, Cormac McCarthy, to conjure his western blood meridian from the darkest corners of his mind. Texas is a land of extremes, where pastel oceans of wildflowers roll to the horizon in every direction in the springtime, but by July, all life has been parched to a uniform brown by the blast furnace Texas sun. Here, almost all plants seem to have thorns. Flip a stone if you dare, and whatever is lurking beneath is almost guaranteed to bite or sting. It's a tough patch of ground, and it's as much of a wonder that settlers somehow managed to survive here as to why in the hell they decided to stop here in the first place. But it's a good thing they did, because it's one of my favorite spots. For me, Texas culture is almost entirely about food, and the food is almost entirely about beef. Perhaps no animal, aside from the cackling blackbirds that strut around every parking lot, is more iconically Texan than the longhorn steer, whose gargantuan racks adorn the walls of steakhouses and bars all across the Lone Star State. But if you'd rather see one of these beasts in the flesh, there's no better place than the Fort Worth Stockyards. After the Second World War, a beef shortage up north inspired Texas drovers to push their herds up to Chicago, where the price per head was 10 times higher than down in Texas, where, at the time, a Texas Longhorn went for just $4. These days, the horns alone sell for up to $5,000 in the stockyards, where the Texas romance of the cattle drive era is still celebrated every day at 11:30 and 4 on the tick. You can even climb up onto the backs of one of these beasts for a photo op for free. But getting back down will cost you $10. The Fort Worth Stockyards can be a pretty damn good time, and it's a great way to kill your one day off per week if you happen to be a hail tech stuck down here fixing Texas-sized hail damage. Hail chasers like to start out the season down here, usually around March or April, and we like to get the hell out of here by June if possible. This year, we didn't get so lucky. We were stuck in the blast furnace down in Austin, then up to Killeen, then back down to Austin, then over to Houston, and finally back up to the Fort Worth, Arlington area. By then, it was deep into July. But it's pretty amazing what you can get used to when you ain't got a choice. The stockyards are hot and crowded on a Sunday afternoon, but there's lots of bars and restaurants lining both sides of the street for blocks, so it's kind of a pond hopping act of moving from one watering hole to the next until after the 4 o'clock cattle drive, when the crowd starts to thin and the temperature starts to drop. The smell of the stockyards on a hot afternoon is actually a pleasant aroma of hot leather, bar swill, post oak smoke, and perhaps a hint of manure. It's cowboy palooza, and if you're shopping for souvenirs, there's everything from beef jerky to bullwhips, and thousands upon thousands of boots and 10-gallon hats. Even if country western isn't exactly your jam, you couldn't ask for a better venue for people watching, or just for raising a cold pint or 10. You gotta stay hydrated, folks. It's a wacky place loaded with all manner of unnecessary eclectica. And while you might assume, as I did, that the old train station was no longer in use, you would be wrong in that assumption. Surely, I thought, that train isn't going to come in here, where hundreds of people were milling all over the tracks, but it sure as hell did, and it was entirely up to you to get your ass out of the way or get squished. One of the best things about Texas is the barbecue, and by barbecue, we're talking brisket. I'll be doing a deeper dive into Texas barbecue in a future episode, but for now, it'll suffice to say that unlike the saucy Kansas City style of barbecue, Texans embrace a purist style, where the brisket is rubbed down with salt, pepper, and garlic, smoked slow and low over post-oak smoke, and sliced to order. It's sliced thick, and is presented bare upon the plate, naked and exposed for critique. The pit master isn't hiding flaws by chopping it up, pouring sauce all over it, and sandwiching it between two buns. It's simple, and it's brave. To experience the best brisket that Texas has to offer, I'm afraid that we've got to leave the high-volume tourist trap of the Fort Worth Stockyard District and head directly to a protein specialist. As a member and contributor in around a dozen barbecue groups, I kept seeing a newer player in the game popping up in the conversation threads. A rising star in the North Texas barbecue community that opened their doors in 2020 just prior to the pandemic, and not only survived that trial but thrived by filling online orders for its Mexican spin on purist barbecue. In just 4 years, they've already managed to land squarely in the coveted top 50 outstanding Q joints in Texas Monthly, which is basically the barbecue Bible in the Lone Star State. We're of course talking about Hurtado BBQ, where the meats are vouched for and vetted, and the real intrigue for me were the side dishes. Texas foodie culture is a melting pot of barbecue, Mexican, and German cuisine, a relationship that we'll explore in depth later in this video. Hurtado BBQ embraces the Tex-Mex marriage with chorizo green beans, elote street corn, hatch chili mac and cheese, and brisket birria tacos. They also pay a little tribute to the German heritage with bacon braised cabbage. That's what makes Hurtado's extra special. They've got all the usual side dishes, but it's the jalapeno glaze here, the cilantro, onions, and cotija cheese there, the presence of tortillas, refried beans, and Mexican rice that sets this place apart from the competition. There are so many interesting options on the menu that you can't possibly experience everything in a single visit, so I've got no choice but to keep going back each hail season. Talking about barbecue always makes me a little thirsty, so let's talk about beer. There is perhaps no better beverage to complement Texas barbecue than a cold pint of Shiner Bock beer, a standard and staple throughout Texas. Now, we're right back to that phantom German influence that's lurking everywhere beneath the surface in the Lone Star State, and often hiding in plain sight. As the name suggests, Shiner Bock is a Bock-style German lager, characterized by its dark amber color, its malty flavor, erring slightly sweet, yet thin and crisp enough to be refreshing in Texas heat, while flavorful enough to hold its own against smoky slabs of protein served on beat-up trays lined with butcher paper. The German influence, believe it or not, is seated on the Mexican side of the Tex-Mex marriage, where it's rooted specifically in the origins of Mexican beer. While you can choose to plunge headfirst into the German cuisine throughout Texas, where it's even taken over whole towns like Fredericksburg, you cannot avoid the German hiding in the woodpile if you hit a Mexican joint and order a name brand beer like Modelo, Corona, Dos Equis, or Tecate. Shockingly, the whole undercurrent of German influence throughout Mexico can be attributed to a single person, who perhaps has the coolest name in all of human history: Mexican Emperor Maximiliano I. More about this handsome fellow in just a minute. Let's get back to his legacy, Mexican beer. As you can see, Mexican beer is basically German Vienna-style lager. You've got your German noble hops for bittering and aroma, and you've got your grain bill of Pilsner and Vienna malt, with one notable difference: the 23.6% of flaked corn. Right there it is. It's the local ingredient, corn, that contributes the subtle sweetness that characterizes a Mexican lager.
It's corn!
There's another not-so-subtle attribute of Mexican beer that you will find is only present when you drink it out of a bottle. The skunky aroma is created intentionally by oxidizing the beer with exposure to sunlight after it's been bottled. That's why most of your Mexican beers are bottled in clear or green glass. The brown bottles typically used in other styles protect the beer from sunlight oxidation. With Mexican beer, as well as other brands in green bottles like Heineken or Rolling Rock, the skunkiness is an acquired taste. You can choose to avoid it by ordering it off the tap or drink it out of a can. All that beer nerd stuff aside, Mexican lagers are light and refreshing, often garnished with a slice of lime and rimmed with salt and sometimes chili powder or tahini. In Texas, that's called ordering your beer dressed. With all of those notable adjuncts and fanfare, you'd hardly suspect that a Mexican beer is a direct descendant of a staunch, no-frills German ancestor. Which brings us back to this guy. Maximiliano, the Emperor of Mexico back in 1867. You're probably thinking, wait a minute, a Mexican emperor? That's right, but it gets even weirder. Maximiliano wasn't even Mexican. He was Austrian. It's a little complicated, but in a nutshell, Mexico was under French control at the time, and they weren't too happy about it. The Austrian Archduke Maximiliano was sitting around eating schnitzel one day when he got a text from his French homies saying, "Hey dude, want to be the Emperor of Mexico? LOL." His ego perhaps got the best of him, and off he went, blissfully unaware of the trials that lied ahead. Wikipedia is none too kind to poor Maximiliano, describing him as a man whose naivety proved unequal to the international intrigues that put him on the throne, and to the brutal struggles within Mexico that led to his execution. Yeah, it didn't end so well. And if you think social media exposure and cyberbullying are tough in this day and age, well, here's the firing squad posing before shooting him. Here's his bloodstained shirt after they pumped him full of lead. And here's his post-mortem profile pic with his glazed eyes looking a little wonky. The whole thing almost feels like a setup, doesn't it? But before Maximiliano had his very bad last day on planet Earth, he was sitting on his Mexican throne, missing his German beer, and he made a few phone calls to encourage a massive immigration of German and Austrian tradesmen to set up shop down in Mexico. As a 54% German, you can take it from me, wherever there are Germans, there's a 54% chance that there's going to be beer involved. Breweries began popping up all over Mexico, but it was a little expensive to be shipping over Vienna and Pilsner malt, so the brewers had to relax their Germanic rigidity a bit and incorporate local ingredients into the grain bill. That's where the corn came into play.
It's corn!
And now you know the whole story. So, the next time you pop the cap off your Corona and inhale that skunky sulfur aroma, don't forget to pour a little out for your dead homie, Maximiliano.
I really like corn. I'm on vacation every single day because I love my occupation. I'm on vacation. If you don't like a life, then you should go and change it. I'm on vacation every single day because I love my occupation. I'm on vacation every single day, every single day. Every single day, every single day.